So there was this one story that I did hear about as a kid. Apparently it was a snarly yow. It basically followed a hunter who was a furrier, or, someone who hunted for fur and sold fur. And there was this whole legend and or myth about this white wolf, like a giant white wolf, and its fur was well sought after. So every hunter in apparently the trade in the area, was going after this wolf. Well, apparently this hunter ended up seeing it, took a shot at it, and the bullet just went straight through. Didn't hurt it or anything like that. It just stood there staring straight at him and across the field, and he couldn't get any closer to it. It kept its distance away from him for the most part. But he took more than one shot at it, and it never went down. Have you guys heard of anything like that in the past, or?
I've heard a similar story. It was with a black wolf. I think it was the same story. It's just a different fur color on the wolf. The way I heard it was ultimately he took numerous shots, and he was famed for his marksmanship. He was a really strong marksman. And he took numerous shots, and not a one appeared to hit. They just appeared to pass through, which is uncommon for someone that's that good of a shot, at least as he was reported as being. And after a good 5 or 6 shots, he got really scared of it and basically retreated off into the woods to get away. Was the way I heard that one.
I have 2 theories. It's either a magical furry or 3 rats in a wolf costume.
I gotta go.
Just barely miss the rats.
I gotta go with 3 rats in a wolf costume.
Those rats were sweating bullets too.
Oh yeah, literal bullets, sweating literal bullets.
It would just barely miss them. Yeah, and they just been, get the fuck out of here, Morse.
Yeah. The story that the same story, apparently he came across this wolf, like, not just once, like, at least twice, and still could not, get a handle on it or anything like that, and it just kind of pitter-pattered away, so...
Yeah, that's kind of the way I heard it, too, was basically the wolf was able to get away every time, which is uncommon for basically an expert marksman to miss that many times, numerous occasions with the same wolf, you know?
Yeah. I don't know, the way I just pictured it when Pandy said that it pitter-pattered away was this guy took shots and it basically just put up both middle fingers and went, "Fuck you, furrier," and walked away like nobody's business. Like, he just fucked your mom.
Yeah. I've actually heard a similar story, like, not similar, but a story about what sounds like the same wolf as well. It was a story. This woman was driving down a back road late at night, and a wolf jumped out in front of her, and she hit it with her car. Felt the impact, everything. Her car was damaged. The front end definitely appeared as if she had hit an animal. And she got out to investigate because, you hit an animal, you got to check what happened, if the animal's still alive or if your car is damaged and you can't drive away or what have you. And she got out and there was no wolf or anything around. And she went and looked behind her car, and off in the distance at the crest of a hill, the wolf's right there, perfectly fine, as if it hadn't been hit, nothing, just perfectly uninjured at the end of it.
It sounds like the possum your mom and I hit in our old car once. That wrecked the car but probably made it out.
Yeah.
Maybe it was the snarly yow and it just shapeshifted into a possum. I'm starting to think that it exists.
some of the reports around these stories are that it would change sizes and shapes and things like that. So.
And does it always look like a wolf? Because, I feel like the wolf is the most common, but there are, like, times where I've been driving on back roads and I see what look like, almost like ghostly animals. Like, obviously, they're animals and they're, and everything. But, like, one time what I saw was a deer. And it looked, like, just as ethereal as, like, I guess this wolf would have looked like to either the hunter or the woman. But it wasn't a wolf. It just... And it's like, I looked in the mirror after I drove by it because I knew it was there. And I was like, okay, wait, holy shit, back up a moment. And so I looked behind me, like, I went kind of slow and I looked behind me and it was gone. And it was so fucking weird. It looked like there was movement in that area, so I know it must have been there, but I don't know if it could possibly be the same thing. I know very little about the snarly yow. There aren't a lot of reports on it on the internet either.
Yeah.
I spent like 20 minutes looking for stuff on this
I think it's definitely more of like a, like the traditional, like, spoken, like, legend and stuff like that.
Yeah.
I forgot what that's called, but it's, definitely more of an oral tradition. That's what it's called.
There it
Yeah,
is.
it's definitely more of an oral tradition, because this is a story that I heard as a kid while I was living in the area back then, and this was probably like the early 2000s.
And it came over from Germany?
Yeah, the origins were 1700s Germanic. Not necessarily that it came from Germany, but it was originally in the 1700s. Germanic settlers in the area are the first ones to have reported a wolf that can shape-shift and is effectively invincible, things like that.
Jeez.
So, like, not only is the snarly owl like a kind of like an animal-esque kind of cryptid, but apparently, especially in the West Virginia area alone, or like even the Northern Virginia area, there seems to be a lot of animal-esque cryptids.
There really are. Like, West Virginians just sit around, huff paint, and go to the zoo, and that's what they come up with.
Yeah.
We say as we record from West Virginia.
Yeah, exactly. I think another sighting might have been a snallygaster?
Oh, God. The thing that looks like a bald eagle and a dragon fucked, and God just looked the other way.
Yeah.
That's really what it looks like.
Yeah, it's like a bird reptile chimera that it shares its roots as well with snarly owl to the 1700s Germanic traditions.
What were the
original
Germans eating back then?
Probably mushrooms.
You know what? That would make sense. Now, apparently the name originally in German was Schnellergeist, which means quick ghost. You'd have to be quick looking like that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, it is definitely a very strange looking being.
Like a hateful platypus.
Yeah. Yeah, definitely got hateful platypus vibes to it.
Yeah, apparently, occasionally octopus-like tentacles. It already looks like half eagle, half dragon. Why do you need tentacles?
Wait a second.
Were the Japanese with the Germans?
They were at one point.
Yeah, there was a period.
That was 200 years later. I feel like everybody tries to count that as a write-off. We just don't let them forget.
It's just, you know?
Yeah, you sure don't let me forget, huh?
You gotta have...
I'm sorry, that's just how it is.
You just gotta have some tentacle porn sometimes, and no episode's complete without tentacle porn. So, I mean, this is our tentacle porn cryptid right here. Guaranteed.
It doesn't help that it already swoops off and carries off its victims, and we don't know what happens to them. I'm assuming that apparently Japanese HUGH artists do.
I mean, I could probably ask around.
Next time you're in Japan, ask your cousins.
Yeah.
I don't think my cousins would know anything about that, but there are definitely some areas in Tokyo, so that would be a good first place to look.
Yeah, you might be able to find the snallygaster. Maybe that's where the snallygaster is really from, and just like takes vacations to the U.S. every so often.
Yeah. Or maybe during the World War II period, you know, with the Axis powers the way that they were, they kind of just
Now, I do believe that it is white or Germanic in origin, because motherfuckers used to use this, or resurrected this whole myth of the snallygaster to frighten freed slaves.
Yeah, it sounds pretty Germanic.
It sounds like a white thing, yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, particularly Germanic. Yeah.
Yeah. Apparently people see this thing around Maryland, which is the weirder thing, and apparently I read somewhere that apparently they think, like, it also is blood-sucking in nature.
What?
Yeah.
I mean, I could see it to an extent.
Yeah.
Like, the way it looks, the weirdest thing about it isn't that it sucks blood. Let's be honest here. You know?
No, it's the tentacles.
It's probably the tentacles.
Maybe that's how it sucks the blood. It uses, like, the suction cups and just... You know?
Oh god, maybe this is where they got the tentacles from. J.K. Rowling used it in a book. She probably retconned everything and added the tentacles somewhere in there.
That might be the case.
J.K. Rowling just ruining everything.
And also we're, a few years after, so Snallygaster is also gay. Do not forget that, because J.K. Rowling totally recast people.
Yeah, it's gay, it's got 3 different eye colors, it's somewhere on the spectrum, and it's also the name of an ice cream flavor.
Yes.
Ice cream flavor?
Yeah,
What?
apparently
Seriously?
a creamery called South Mountain Creamery, located in Frederick County, Maryland, has an ice cream flavor named the Snallygaster, and it consists of peanut butter flavored ice cream with a caramel swirl, peanut butter cups, and pretzels.
Honestly, I would not mind myself a side of Snallygaster.
Scary son of a bitch, but tasty.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Snallygaster confirmed as the tastiest cryptid of the night.
Yeah. So speaking of, reptiles, we'll be getting into that a little bit later. So speaking of like reptiles, there's another reptilic cryptid in the area as well. What's it called? It's kind of
HUGH, I believe, is
HUGH?
how it's pronounced. It's
HUGH?
I think that's one we're talking about here. It's a 500-pound alligator snapping turtle, basically.
Yeah, that's it.
It kind of gives you some flashbacks to like the Loch Ness Monster, good old Nessie out there, in that it's something that could predate back to prehistoric times where there was megafauna out there that existed, and there's reports all over the world of megafauna from that time still being around, just hiding out in places. This is totally something that could. I mean, seriously. I'm sure everyone's seen a really big snapping turtle in their time. Like, those things get huge.
Yeah, but I think, isn't this one considered to be, like, two-headed?
In some instances, yeah. There are reports of people seeing it as two-headed. There are reports of it just being a really big snapping turtle. I mean, honestly, if I saw a 500-pound snapping turtle running at me, I don't know. I'd be looking too clearly at its head.
No, I mean, the funny thing is, apparently it's not just a West Virginia thing. It's also considered a Pennsylvania thing, and said to dwell around Ohio, Allegheny, and the Monongahela rivers.
Yeah, that river is actually one of the key places it's reported, and I think where the origin comes from is around that river.
Yeah, in Marion County. And what gets me about the Pennsylvania one is what I find funny is, outside of Pennsylvania is this old, originally used to be a nuclear reactor. That thing could have ended up with two heads, and we will never know.
Yeah.
That's true.
Yeah.
I also would not be surprised if this is something that's also found in, like, swamp-like areas. Because of the whole alligator bit, Yeah.
Yeah, because, I mean, alligator snapping turtles are super common, the regular-sized ones are super common in, like, swamps, marshes, lakes, rivers, things like that. I mean, you have to be careful during the summer going into a lake around here, because, I mean, a snapping turtle can take your toe off. It's a thing that happens. It's not uncommon.
No, that's true. But I'd say this thing definitely makes those pale in comparison. One of the original sightings quoted with the HUGH,
I believe.
Apparently involves a 12-year-old boy being dragged away by it and never seen again.
What?
So I'd say it takes more than a finger. I'd say it takes children.
Yeah.
Oh, it's like a kappa then.
Oh God, America's Got Kappas. Right back to Japan and invading the mainland. Was Pearl Harbor not enough? Now we get their turtles.
Oh no.
Yeah, I mean, it stands to reason that it'll haul kids off, though, because, I mean, snapping turtles are totally carnivorous things. They eat fish and things like that, and something 500 pounds.
And 20 feet long.
Yeah, something 500 pounds and 20 feet long. I mean, a kid's going to be
if that kid can
a pretty
fight
solid meal,
Yeah, if that kid can fight it, that kid's the new cryptid.
Yeah.
That kid is the new HUGH.
I feel like there's like another monster-esque type of, I've heard of something. It's literally just like a monster in the area. I mean,
yeah, it's not even. I mean, it crosses into the barrier of being also not really an animal and just literally an absolute fucking unit.
It starts with a G. I know that, but that's
a grafted monster.
Grafted monster. Okay, so
yeah, the thing looks like God. I don't know if anybody would know the old Looney Tunes cartoons, but the witch Brunhilde had this fuzzy dude with her. I forget the thing's name, but it looks like that. It's just a weird looking thing, and apparently it's just huge, and everybody is seeing it, and they're like, "Oh yeah, no, this thing is just a headless fucking beast like the tank from Left 4 Dead."
It's got eye titties on it.
It's got eye titties.
Its eyes are right about chest level.
Has probably fucked your mother.
Yeah, probably. Yes. I mean, the thing's just massive. It's humanoid in shape, but it doesn't have a head or a neck or anything like that. It's basically its facial structure, which is pretty much just eyes, are basically on the chest. And it's described as being really muscular and big, really big. And capable of hauling people off into the woods and things like that.
Yeah, apparently a lot of people, because of how weird this thing sounds and how weird the description is. They're like, no, that thing can't be real, but it was real enough to put in Fallout 76, so there we go.
And Looney Tunes.
Yeah. And Looney Tunes, yeah. But with hair.
With hair. Yeah. And he was, from what
apparently
I remember...
they started using Rogaine.
Yeah, from what I remember, like, the one with the hair, though, was kind of nice. I mean, it was in Looney Tunes, though, so, like, it could be pretty skewed from the actual portrayal of the Grafton monster. But,
I mean, apparently this thing has only been, like, referenced within, like, the last 100 years, but, there have been at least hundreds of sightings or something like that. A guy named Robert Cockrell started writing them down. But, like, a lot of people would be like, oh, I saw this thing out in the woods, or I saw this thing by the river, and it was this huge, bulking thing. And the descriptions were all the same. It was a giant, white, headless thing. And Jesus Christ, I never want to see it.
Yeah. I mean, some of the pictures of the thing are, I mean, there aren't any photographs, but some of the depictions of it are, like, monstrously big and just, like, no hair or fur or anything like that, just pure white, paper white skin on this huge monstrous thing with basically a face on his chest, you know?
Yeah, apparently the skin is described as sea-like or something, so I guess it's thick from the way it looks. The way it got its name, though, is because it comes from Grafton, West Virginia.
Okay.
Yeah, that's where it gets its name.
Yeah.
I would not want to see it. I feel like it's really veiny.
It ended up in a
feel
Fallout
like it
70.
would be very veiny, yeah.
There's no way that absolute unit. That thing could murk God.
Probably,
and who would stop it?
I mean, honestly, like, think about a human bodybuilder. They're super veiny people. So, think about this thing being ripped as hell. There's no way it's not just a huge goddamn lump of veins and muscle and just able to throw a fucking drum of oil at you or something like that.
What if it's, like, closer to, like, Tangela? Just, like, like the God. Pokemon? Yeah, it's just, like, a bunch of,
that's what's under all the vines. You rip that off, it just becomes a 9-foot fucking unit. What if people really just saw Dave Bautista out in the wild?
Then it's not impossible. It's not an impossibility.
Oh, man.
Dave Bautista is really hundreds of years old, and he's been just freaking out West Virginians for the past 100 years.
I mean, seriously, like...
Have you seen the man who's played Drax the Destroyer?
Where was he born? When was he born? Do you know that? You don't know that?
Have you ever seen Dave Bautista and the Grafton Monster in the same room? I think not.
Yeah, I don't think so.
Very unlikely.
I'm pretty sure that you've never seen both in the same area, same room.
Coincidence?
Does he get a lot of sun? Because I feel like the Grafton Monster does not get sun, like, at all. Because especially if...
I think he's just impervious to a tan.
That's true. Maybe he just burns.
Thick skin,
and that's why he just stays out of the sun. It's UV rays. You gotta protect your skin like that. And he has a lot of it.
Even seeing him with a tan doesn't answer if, it's the same thing. Spray tans are a thing. They exist.
True.
Could have a spray tan. Really good. You can get spray tan in the can. It doesn't look great, but you can get it. And you just spray it all over yourself, and then, I'm not the Grafton Monster. You don't know me. You've never seen me before.
What is the name of the fucking thing? Because what if it's just the Looney Tunes monster, and it's like you use the name he goes by, and he's like, I haven't heard that name in a long time, and he just went through pattern baldness.
Or maybe it was just like a trend back then to be bald,
Yeah. Maybe that was the thing, 150, 200 years ago, was just being bald. Maybe that was a thing in West Virginia back then, and that's where he found himself settling, so...
Yeah, and the whole hair thing was just him trying to grow a mullet at that point,
He's trying to get an ape drape going on, and it just,
And that's just the thing that stuck. That's what gave him his image.
You go through that ape drape period, and you're like, this looks really good on me, and that's your image.
Yeah.
You're now known as the guy with the ape drape. That's how that works.
Not important, but the witch's name is Witch Hazel, and I completely fucked that up, and I'm gonna have to live with that for the rest of my life.
Yeah, it's on recording. Mm-hmm. Everyone knows.
Speaking of fuck-ups, what about Bat Boy? Nature's affront to God. And every tabloid's best friend since the 80s.
I mean, honestly, I feel like everyone kind of knows Bat Boy, because it's probably just a human mutation. Like, sometimes a person comes out kind of weird, and things like that happen.
I mean, there's Batman, and he's kind of weird, and, you know...
Well, then Batman had an illegitimate son the same year I was born, and, well, both of us apparently have just been fucked by everything.
Maybe Batboy is Batman's illegitimate son, and that's just how this works out, you know?
Or maybe it's the other way around.
Yeah. Maybe Batboy predates, and Batman is Batboy's illegitimate son, and, you know...
That would explain the bats.
What if Batboy is who killed Batman's parents? Have you ever seen Batboy and Batman's parents in the same room that wasn't an alley?
I think no. Coincidence?
Yeah.
He was just coming to take what was his in the first place. That's exactly what happened.
I know that you're going to become the Batman, and that is my name rightfully. And just, like, killed his parents. That's how it worked out. Backfired, honestly. Like, you know, that's what made Batman. But still, maybe Batboy can see the future.
And again, it does explain the whole Batman thing. Like, you know, why did Batman pick bats? Because of Batboy.
Yep.
That was his dad.
Yep.
Now, apparently it says that this poor fucking freak of nature was created by one of the writers who worked for the magazine that put him out in the first place, Weekly World News. It was a guy named Dick Culpa. And the whole story was that this kid was in hiding from the government because they were trying to hunt him down. Because, I mean, look at him. Would you not want to do an autopsy to figure out what makes something like that?
I know about this, actually. Like, this is something that I briefly read about, like, or maybe I watched a documentary. I can't remember. Maybe it was, like, maybe it was on the History Channel. That's what it was. Probably was on the History Channel. But I remember watching something about the Batboy and about how it was like he was like an experimentation more than anything else.
Yeah, like he was just some
just a poor lad just drug into the truths of science and ended up becoming his own truth.
Yeah, like a genetic experiment. But yeah, like I remember as a kid seeing these tabloids like, where is he? Like $1,000 for actual picture of Batboy. Like, they got really into it. And for years and years and years, they would put Batboy somewhere. Like, he got smaller and smaller over time, but he was somewhere always on the cover of these. And I don't think it's until the Weekly World News ceased to be a publication in 2007 where you stopped finally seeing Batboy everywhere.
Yeah, I remember the National Enquirer, the standard conspiracy and paranoia magazine that was at every grocery store checkout for years, for the longest time, at least had Batboy somewhere in it. It was a super common thing for Batboy to exist in those magazines as at least a bit piece for forever, you know?
Yeah, and the thing is, the funnier thing is like, apparently, in these magazines, he would always be captured, and then he would always somehow get away. And they ended up making a musical about Batboy.
Yeah, like this guy who looks like a bat is able to totally just escape the confines of whoever captured him and just get out of there and be perfectly able to escape. Like, seriously, how do you not notice the guy that looks like a bat running off through the woods? How do you not notice him escaping your facility?
Yeah, and there's no way that back in that time period, you didn't have at least one dude look at that kid and be like, look at that kid with the ugly fucking face, what's his deal? Like, there's no way nobody noticed him.
Yeah, not at all.
How do you get away?
Mean, and this isn't the first experiment to escape. I mean, there's multiple ones, which is something we'll get into a little bit later. But, like...
Why haven't they tried to catch an experiment on at this point?
I mean, Mothman, but anyway.
I got one.
Who haven't they tried to capture and fuck?
Yeah, I got one that's, kind of close to home for me, because I'm, strong into believing in alien visitations. Have any of you all heard about the Flatwoods Monster?
Oh, hell yeah. That seems that and Mothman are like a staple of, like, West Virginia cryptid conspiracies. Because you throw a stone and you hit somebody in West Virginia and go, hey, before you kick my ass for me hitting you with a rock, do you know what the Flatwoods Monster is? And you bet they will say yes, and now I'm going to kick your ass. Yeah, because you got the Flatwoods Monster in the north and then Mothman in the south. The Flatwoods Monster is actually, so the initial story goes that somebody saw what looked to be like a meteor or something like that raining down into the middle of the forest and impacting. And, of course, you're going to go out and investigate what happened. This is like the early 1900s. I want to say it was like 1920s.
you're going to go out and see what happened. You're going to go figure out where exactly, you know, what went down out there. If there's a rock embedded in the ground or what have you.
1952. It's
1952.
A little younger than that.
All right. I stand corrected.
Yeah.
But, I mean, you know, someone saw it going down and went out to investigate. And when they got out there, they reported seeing this being that looked kind of similar to a bat on some sort of floating disc coming through the woods. And I mean, of course, you see that coming out of the woods, you're going to run. She turned and ran away, got out of the scene. But ever since, there's been sightings of this flatwood monster in the area. It's basically just a crashed alien ship with an alien visitor who's hanging out there, probably trying to repair their ship.
Probably.
Yeah.
Well, apparently 50 years later, investigators are trying to say that, yes, a meteor probably fell out of the sky, but they're thinking it was just a barn owl perched on a branch or something. But that sounds so inconclusive.
Well, that's kind of... There was a lot of visitations in the 50s, it seems. Mm-hmm. You know, and that's...
Maybe that was just their timing. Maybe they were trying to get us to go to space, and, well, I mean, shit, it worked.
Yeah, it did get us to space if that's what they were trying to do.
Yeah, no, but apparently two brothers are credited with the original sighting. Them and their friend, apparently they went out and they tried to shine a flashlight at it and everything. And it was like, what's this thing? And apparently it looks like it was this green monster with a red face that was hooded, and it was like 10 feet tall. So, you know...
It's pretty big.
Yeah, a 6-foot guy is going to be 4 feet shorter than this absolute monstrosity. But, like... Seeing something like that, I'm definitely not going to think barn owl, because barn owls are usually, like, brown and white. So there is no way in the world that is going to be a barn owl. So I mean,
it's also, like, really big. Like, would you say 10 feet?
Yeah.
That's, like, twice the size that I am, and I'm, like, really small. Like, I can only imagine... I honestly can't even imagine something that's 10 feet tall. I'm not gonna lie.
I mean, it's shorter than the ceiling in most houses, or like taller than ceiling in most houses. You know?
Yeah, no, that thing would have to bend over. But like, there's no way you're gonna shine a flashlight at that thing. And if you're trying to describe it as a 10-foot tall, green hooded alien with a red face, no barn owl on a branch is going to look like that. Yeah. If you turn around, you're going to be like, yeah, that's a barn owl on a branch? Never fucking mind. What was I freaking out about?
I mean, if you're already freaking out because you don't know what happened, like, because there was an explosion in the woods, because a meteor impacted, because if it was big enough to actually, like, be very noticeable hitting the ground, there was some sort of explosion. You felt it.
Yeah.
I mean, you're already going to be kind of freaked out, and if you're going through the woods shining a flashlight, and you're seeing this, like, glow of eyes coming back at you, you're probably not going to be thinking clearly enough to say, this is an owl in a tree. It's going to look like a 10-foot tall monster.
Yeah, there's no way that a barn owl and this thing look anything alike. But apparently the Committee for Skeptical Inquiry was trying to say, yeah, what they probably saw was a barn owl, because the way they're describing it sounds like a barn owl, but barn owl wears a hood.
I mean, yeah. I mean, not just that, though. Like, owls, especially, like, I'm assuming, like, in this area and even farther south, like, in the Kentucky area, because I actually have some stories from my dad about the Kentucky area. But owls are a bad omen to a lot of tribes. So, apparently. So, like, I would not be surprised if like, you know, that might have had, like, some play into the skepticism or anything like that. So the thing is, it feels like, especially in the West Virginia area, and maybe it's because it's so, like, populated with animal life and people who spend way too much time in the fucking woods, that you get a lot of these stories of animal-human hybrids. There seem to be just, like, a lot of them. And, I mean, like we were talking about, there's... Like you said, when people freak out, there's no way their brain is thinking logically. Like, they're just like, oh, you know, that's this thing. You know, glowing eyes after hearing an explosion, you are probably going to think, oh god, monster. It's just, I guess the description throws me off as like, but what if they saw something else?
Yeah. Yeah, no, I mean, I'm a firm believer in alien activity and alien visitors, so I don't disbelieve it, you know?
Yeah.
It's a case of, like, you have to take it with a dose of healthy skepticism as well, because, I mean, human fear is something to factor in, you know? you're scared, you're going to be seeing weird things. You don't. I mean, we're basically a meat container for a jar of yogurt that was given sentience. You know, there's going to be weird experiences and weird perceptions, and there's no way to share it.
And if we throw in the idea of like neuroplasticity and everything, like whatever we see, we can change, you know, what we remember to fit, you know, how we feel like we remembered it as well. So if they feel like they saw a monster, they're going to remember it as a monster.
Yeah, and I mean, the other thing to take into account is the more times you remember a memory, the fuzzier it gets. And something like that, you're going to be retelling it to a lot of people over time. So it's going to get fuzzier and fuzzier. And just human nature. The better story is the one that survives. The one involving aliens versus seeing an owl in a tree, that's the one that's going to survive.
Yeah. And not only that, when you play telephone with a story like that, that story is going to get distorted just, you know, from person to person. So you're going to start the beginning of the story like, I opened a jar of spaghetti sauce, and at the end of it be like, my uncle caused the Holocaust, you know?
Yeah.
Like, you're gonna get two very different things by the end of it. And maybe that's exactly where this whole 10-foot green red-faced alien came from.
Yeah, because, I mean, I'm sure everybody played telephone in elementary school where someone would give you a word, and then you had to, like, they'd whisper it in your ear, and then you had to whisper it to the person next to you, and then the last person would say the word, and the first person would say the word they were given. And it was never the same. It was drastically different. You'd start with bicycle and end up with Mars, you know? Like, it's not even similar at all.
Yeah, no, you could start with mouse and end with Hadron Collider explosion, and nobody would be like, oh, that couldn't have been it, because you would never know by the end of it.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, there's something to be said for human perception as well. And in any of these stories is, you know, everyone's going to perceive things differently. Not everyone thinks alike. Everyone thinks differently. Which, you know, it also impacts your perceptions, you know? Who can say that the color green is the same color to me as anybody else? You know, I could see green completely differently from every single other person in the world. And it extends to bigger concepts, like seeing an owl 10 foot up in a tree. It might be an owl to me, it might be an alien to you. You don't know?
Yeah.
Well, with that being said, what about the sheep squatch? Like, what makes it so a person sees a Sasquatch made of sheep? Like,
or a sheep that's a Sasquatch.
That's a fun one, because, I mean, the sheep squatch is basically just Sasquatch, but sheep, effectively.
Yeah. Perhaps it's simply America's way of competing with Japan's Catboy. Why do I keep going back to Japan? But the point I'm making is, because I saw one picture earlier when I was looking up shit, right? I saw one picture earlier. I saw Sasquatch, and then I saw Sheep Squatch, and it looked like a beefcake with a goat's head, and I want answers. Who was looking at a Sasquatch and going, but what if you made him hot and a ram?
Listen, I mean...
that does fall in line with the whole...
If you're born with a ram's head, you're going to get ripped. It's the only answer. You're going to get ripped.
You would have to.
You're going to get fucking shredded.
Wait,
and you're going to be a sheep squatch.
Does that mean his schlong's a ramrod?
It would actually be a ramrod in this case.
It would have to be a ramrod.
He would have a ramrod. Man, of everyone we've talked about or will talk about tonight, I think sheep squatch probably has the biggest dick.
No, I think we can get sexier and talk about Mothman and how everybody in West Virginia has probably tried to fuck that thing.
Or be fucked by.
Yeah.
Or be fucked by.
Yeah.
But here's my thing. There's no way you're getting fucked by Mothman, because I've looked at that thing and Mothman is a bottom. That is just big bottom energy.
Yeah.
If Mothman's a top, he's a power bottom.
Yeah, but getting back to sheep squatch, I mean, it's got some basis in legend, because there's all sorts of reports of these big furred things like Bigfoot, the Yeti, Sasquatch. Bigfoot is Sasquatch. It's basically the same thing. Yeah. Sheep squatch, you know?
I mean,
if there's just like a colony of Sasquatches of different kinds.
Like it could be related, because I mean, think about big cats, you know? There's a different big cat for every area of the world.
That's
effectively.
True.
The Yeti exists in like the mountains around India.
The Himalayas, specifically.
Yeah, the Himalayas, yeah. It's cold. You develop a lot of fur. You know,
Yeah.
live with that. The Bigfoot is most commonly sighted in the Pacific Northwest. It's not that cold. It doesn't get that cold during the winter. It almost never snows. You wouldn't develop as big of a coat of fur. The sheep squatch exists in the West Virginia Appalachian area. It's cold during the winter. Not
Cold
as
enough.
cold. Yeah, it's not as cold as it can get. I'm not trying to say it's the coldest area, but it's cold.
Cold
You
enough.
develop a relatively thick coat of fur to handle the cold.
Well, and isn't it? I mean, like it's called sheep squash. Would it actually be like wool?
From what I've seen and what I've heard, yeah, it's basically got a sheep's wool on it. It's effectively Bigfoot, but with sheep wool.
Apparently not enough wool to cover those pecs. I'm telling you, that thing looked ripped in that picture.
Honestly, when I first heard about the sheep squash, and it was basically like, I first heard it as like, I thought it was just a bunch of sheep just melded together in the shape of like a humanoid like figure, you know?
Sheeps are secretly T-1000s, and they all just liquefied together into Arnold Schwarzenegger.
Our name is Sheep Squatch. We are one. We are many.
It's a new form of lesion, really.
Oh, God. I mean, and of course, another motif I seem to have tonight, other than, Japan's take on creatures. And what if it's just a Sasquatch looked at a sheep kind of funny one day, and here we are?
Yeah, fucking Bigfoot just rolled in and is like, damn, you looking sexy, Mr. Sheep. And
That sheep big, thick, though.
I think that's another play on what a furrier might be. So let's kind of
Sheep Squatch is just a furry.
So everybody, Radio Free Paranoia, we are now devolving into furry chat. So
let's get on to what the real furries are really looking forward to tonight. Mothman. We have mentioned him multiple times tonight. I think it is now time that we finally give him the limelight.
Yeah.
Because you can't mention West Virginia, much like the Flatwoods Monster, and not mention Mothman. He's got a damn festival to him every year in September.
Yes, and I can say the West Virginia area, like Northern Virginia area, is really the only time I've ever heard of Mothman. I can say that. It's not very common to hear about out in Arizona, in that area, in the desert.
Yeah.
So when I first moved back to the Virginia area, actually you and our good friend had mentioned Mothman, and that was my first experience with Mothman.
Yeah, you kind of looked at us a little bit funny when we said that. You looked at us like, I'm sorry, what? Context, please.
Yeah.
And Mothman is just it's a creature that came from... I swear, there are quite a few people who listen to this who are already going to know who Mothman is and are probably, excited in their chairs. But, for those who don't know, Mothman is a creature that was originally sighted around Point Pleasant between 1966 and 1967. Point Pleasant, West Virginia. And the way it was described was this man-sized bird creature thing. So I'm not sure where they got
with glowing red eyes.
With glowing red eyes.
The eyes were important.
Yeah.
Just this blackened creature with glowing red eyes. And I don't know exactly where the name Mothman kind of picked up.
He was flying. He was flying through the air when he was first seen.
See, funny enough, the History Channel, same documentary with the other thing, I can't remember now, but they also covered Mothman, and that's how I actually really understood the legend of the Mothman. Yeah. He was flying, first sighted, I guess, in the mountains, back roads. There were couples that were just driving down the road. They saw him, stopped, because they were like, oh my god, there's a human flying at us, whatever. Yeah. And then there was, of course, the most famous legend with the bridge.
Yeah, he was. Yeah. The first sighting was actually around an area that's known as the TNT area, which is where there was an old World War II munitions plant as well. So, I mean, it plays it during World War II. There wasn't a lot of environmental consciousness, as it were. It plays into reason that there were a lot of pollutants and things as well that could have resulted in mutations of humans or animals or anything into becoming something like this.
Oh, yes, right, Batboy. That's what I was thinking of earlier, because Mothman was also apparently believed to be an experiment of some sort that had also escaped.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah, and like you mentioned with the whole bridge incident, apparently, like one of the biggest sort of what would I say? One of the biggest sort of things that Mothman is connected to is a bridge collapse. And also, I feel like a lot of that and a lot of the stories gave way to a 1975 book by a guy named John Keel. Before I get this wrong, John Keel, who wrote a book called The Mothman Prophecies, which was actually turned into a movie. And now I feel like we have to sit down and watch that. But anyway. But yeah, no, Mothman is just the most popular. He gets a festival every year. Back in 2020, people wanted all the Confederate statues removed and replaced with Mothman. Mothman's just fucking popular. I have a friend, out in Berryville who actually used to live in West Virginia and go to, West Virginia University in Morgantown. And he used to live, like, right across from, like, this Pizza Hut. And one night, he and his buddy were high, and they decided, you know, to go get snacks or whatever. They walked back home, and they got inside, and he happened to look out the window, and he saw this, you know, tall, towering figure that looked winged, and the one thing he noticed was the eyes, and he's like, holy shit. He ended up drawing this, and he showed it to me years later, and I looked at it, and I'm like, are you gonna tell me you saw the Mothman once? And he looked at me and went, I really did, though! And, like, it's interesting how you can go to West Virginia and, once again, you throw a stone and someone can be like, yeah, I know who the Mothman is. Now get back here so I can fight you for hitting me. But, like, I don't know. I think the Mothman is definitely an interesting one. And it's, like, there's so many different depictions of him, I guess. Because most of the time you see him, it's just a darkened creature with red eyes that's winged. Some other depictions of him actually have moth wings and a moth head, and it's just like a dude in a moth costume, basically. And, I mean, once again, it's another one of those that was so popular, they put it in Fallout 76 because it's another one of those ones that was like, yeah, no, it's gotta go in, it's too popular. It's too popular, just like the Grafton Monster. I wonder if there's a mod where you can make the two fight. And somebody needs to add it, now that I've said it. I know Fallout 76 is not popular, guys, but somebody just, for me, do it.
Yeah,
do it. Or if there is already one, send it, like, you know, like, tell us where. Yes.
DM
Yeah,
us,
because, I mean,
please.
Mothman is super popular in the area, just because, like, he's also not depicted as violent, either.
No.
You know?
Yeah, no, he just shows up and he's like, hey, and then just disappears. Like,
well, with the bridge incident, there's actually a bit of a debate there.
But what if he just happened to be there at the same time? Like, he just came across it and, you know, the big bridge was all collapsed. He was like, oh, shit. And then just got out of there.
Well,
like, what if he was just as surprised as they were?
I mean, yeah, and it was also said that he tried to warn the townspeople before the bridge had actually collapsed. But it's also said that he is the cause of the collapse.
By a lamp. And that's how the collapsed.
No.
His one weakness.
No, watch out. Streetlight goes on. Mothman's distracted.
So another really popular cryptid in the area, and that was really popular at least in 2012 on the internet, and 4chan specifically. And I hate to even bring up this site right now, but there was a lot of reportings of the black-eyed children.
Yeah, and they're reported all over, and I mean you can find them in West Virginia, DC, pretty much everywhere. I actually have a story where I was in Arlington, and I was parked in a parking garage. I was coming back from someplace, and I was walking through the parking garage, and it's, you know, it feels weird. It feels kind of wrong, but it's one of the subterranean parking garages in the area, and honestly, being underground in that area, it feels wrong in the first place, because you've got all the lights around you, and it's not a very good feeling, so you can tell you're underground.
And you're like already sketched out, like, at this point.
Yeah. Like, you can tell you're underground, you've got all the fluorescent lighting going on, it's not a good feeling in the first place. So I'm walking down to my car, and I'm like 4 levels down. I'm walking down to my car, and there's this guy, this homeless guy. Like, it's very obvious he's homeless. He's wearing tattered clothes, an old jacket, and there's a little kid with him. So I'm steering a bit clear, but I'm not too far away. So there's a kid with a guy. I mean, how bad can it be? There's a kid with him, right? So I'm walking by, and this guy kind of turns to me, and he looks at me, and I get this really bad feeling. Like something is wrong, and the kid's not looking at me at all. And the kid starts to turn, and as the kid gets about 3/4 of the way turned, the lights in the whole parking garage go out. Every single light in unison.
No.
Yeah.
No. I would not be about that at
It
all.
gets completely dark. I mean, what do? You're underground. There's no lights. There's nothing. There's no, like, outside influence of light. Anything.
There
weren't even emergency lights that lit up. It was just pitch black. And the lights were off. In reality, I'm pretty sure it was about 15, 20 seconds, but it felt like hours the lights were off. And all of a sudden, the lights flick back on. And this guy and the kid are gone. And I mean, it's a parking garage, but there's not a lot of cars in this particular area I'm in. There's nowhere to hide. It's just like up and down, standard parking garage circle going down underground. There's no way that they could have gotten out of where we were. We were in the middle of this set of the parking garage. There's no way they could have gotten out there without me hearing running footsteps. So I was the running footsteps, going to my car. I got in my car, turned that thing on, and just blasted out of that parking garage and got out of there. I got on the Beltway before I even fully calmed down getting out of there. I was on the Beltway, booking it down the road, and I was like, okay, I feel like I'm all right the whole time, checking the back seat of my car and everything, looking for any sign of either of these beings. I'm not going to call them people anymore. These beings being in the back of my car.
I would definitely be scared. I would.
Yeah. Now, this isn't the first time I've heard this story. The first time I heard this story was when you were on the Beltway and finally got the nerve to call your mom. And your mom and I just happened to be in the mall parking lot, and we parked. And you're like, I just encountered a black-eyed child. And your mom's like, what? And I'm like, go on. And I like the part of the story when you originally told it, because I think it's a lot of the details, I think you only hyper-focus on them simply because it just happened to you. But the part of the story where when the lights went off, it wasn't just that the lights went off, it's that you heard footsteps coming towards you very quickly, and then the lights came back on and nothing was there. And that's the part where I was like, I never want to run into those things. Now, if anyone doesn't know what the black-eyed children are, the reason the homeless guy is not a surprise is because black-eyed children usually tend to hone in on hitchhikers, people with nobody else around, or homeless people that they can basically latch onto and take without a problem. They're considered to be, like, telepathic of a nature, possibly psychically vampiric, and they're usually between the ages of, like, 6 and 16. They're not much younger, not much older, and they don't say much, and they're spooky. Old. Yeah, that's what you said, yeah. Like an 8-year-old girl. And they usually tend to be just pale, completely black-eyed kids. And they just latch onto you. And that's how they take people. And they're just one of the scariest. And I would say that they are actually a worldwide cryptid. You hear a lot of them in, like, cities, because that's the best place that you're going to get hitchhikers and homeless people. But they are considered like a worldwide phenomenon. There are sightings in Texas. There have been sightings in, like, Britain. Like, a British tabloid said something about them once. These things, because that's what I would call them, are, like, they're kind of a thing. Like you mentioned, in 2012, they were a huge thing on 4chan because a lot of people were telling stories about them. And I have no clue what it is about 2012, other than the fact that a movie came out called Black Eyed Kids in 2012.
Wait, really?
Yes, it was a horror film produced with Kickstarter funding. And it was a comment that these creepy children were just an urban legend that had been floating around the internet for years, and I thought it was fascinating, so they made a movie about it.
I mean, it's not the first time that, children or children-esque things have been used in stories.
Oh, yeah,
I mean, I remember, being, out in Arizona, another desert tale, if you will, about, this lady who would kidnap children, and then she would use those same kidnapped children to draw in other children. So, and that's a story for, another time, really. But I think it's the same concept. So I remember reading about of all these accounts back then, and I was just like, I don't want anything to do with children. For the longest time, I did not. I was not taking any chances. Back in 2012, I was 14, I think, maybe at the time, 15, really 15. So I was already pretty sketched out. And then I get a little sister, so I'm like, okay, let's go. I'm gonna have a kid all the time, it's just better than I bring any friends over while I'm around, because that's not something I'm about. And I was also it's in the middle of the desert too, so the desert has already sketched me out already with the things that is in the desert. And again, tales for other times, but I'm just gonna leave it at that.
Desert just straight creepy. But yeah, no, the black-eyed kid thing has been around for a very long time. I feel like there have been accounts for years. I think it just became slightly popularized in just that bubble because of that movie. But I feel like those stories have existed for a very long time. I felt like I heard them well before 2012 about these kids. But I think the most interesting story was simply that you had come across one.
Yeah, and this is my first time hearing it. And I enjoyed it, but also did not enjoy it. That was very unsettling for me.
That was not the best experience I've ever had in my life, I'll tell you. I don't know it was the worst, but definitely not the best either.
Definitely top 5 not good.
Yeah, top 5 not good. Yeah. But, I mean, I think that's pretty much all we've got for tonight on cryptids in West Virginia and the surrounding areas, more or less.
Can we end it on my favorite one?
Which favorite one?
Goat Man.
Goat Man.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes. The cryptid who goes to Maryland and attacks parked cars with an axe. Hands down, 10 out of 10, best cryptid.
I'd say so.
You just gotta smash cars,
Sometimes I feel like he could get Sheep Squatch. No, Goat Man is just Sheep Squatch's PCP hyped cousin.
Yeah, definitely.
Goat Man is when Sheep Squatch does a bunch of PCP and goes on a spree.
Goat Man is when Sheep Squatch moves to Baltimore.
Yep.
Goat Man is just Sheep Squatch on a rage. Just an absolute rampage. He gets an axe. There's some cars available. Why not?
Yeah. You just gotta, it's kind of it's just a crunchy wrapper around the soft insides that you want to eat,
Yeah, no,
you gotta break that wrapper open.
Yeah, that's what happens when you introduce Sheep Squatch to meth.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Go out there, you do some crack, and all of a sudden you're out attacking.
You're banging cars with an axe.
Yeah, that's how it goes.
You just decide to Lizzie Borden a Kia Soul. Who can stop you?
That's how it goes.
What if it really was just Lizzie Borden, just, in a goat mask or something like that?
Lizzie Borden took an axe, gave a Honda 50 whack.
Yeah.
That's how it works out.
Oh, man.
Cryptids.
All right, yeah, I think that's it for tonight, at least on West Virginia. Tune in next time, and we talk about some more cryptids, maybe throw in some conspiracies. I don't know.
Ooh, conspiracies.
I'm kind of feeling conspiratorial.
Yeah.
Yeah, there's some. Well, we mentioned cults earlier, right before this recording session. We could definitely touch up on some cults.
Yeah,
aliens we mentioned. We can definitely do a lot of aliens. I know later in the year, Loam and I. Oops.
Because no one listening to this knows who I am.
Yes, well, Loam and I are actually going to be heading down to Arizona, and we will be visiting the capital of aliens in New Mexico, Rockwell. We will be heading down there. Roswell. Shit!
Rockwell's a painter.
Rockwell is a painter, isn't it?
Norman Rockwell.
And Rockwell is what douchebags climb.
Oh, I don't know how to English very well. I'm sorry.
It's okay.
So we'll get into that also with the Japanese.
Yeah, but I feel like we're also heading to the capital of the most humanoid cryptids, Tucson.
Is Tucson the cryptid?
Is Tucson a cryptid? Okay, I believe it. I wholeheartedly believe that all of Tucson is a cryptid. Ah, man, just being in Tucson itself is just Loam here soon. We'll be in Tucson for the first time later this year.
I've seen Hamlet
so
too.
sorry.
I don't need to go to Tucson.
I am so sorry you're going to find yourself in Tucson. I'm so sorry.
I'm just going to get a pair of skates and get drunk, and then teach a drama class how to botch Shakespeare.
You better be careful, because that's how you end up stuck in Tucson. That's how that plays out.
Yeah.
No, you end up on Broadway eventually.
It's kind of like Ohio.
Kissing Elizabeth
It's kind of like Ohio. Haha, welcome to Tucson. Now you're stuck in Tucson.
Yeah. I mean, we can also probably visit the Bisbee area again. I'm sure there's a bunch of different weird stuff that's happening in the Bisbee area.
I want to go back to Bisbee just to go to this one store I went to. It was a thrift store, but yeah, no, I definitely want to go back to Bisbee. That was a fun type of weird.
Yep.
Yeah.
And I do know that we'll have a witness of some sort. My dad actually has some really cool stories about his time in the States in general. He's traveled a lot. He definitely has his own stories that we can, touch into later on.
Yeah.
So that's definitely going to be up in the next episodes.
Definitely. Yeah, but I think we're about out of time. So, I mean, if you have anything you want to hear about or anything you want us to talk about or any experiences you want to talk to us about, let us know, and we'll see what happens at the next episode. Thank you for tuning in, everybody.